Something I was thinking about yesterday during worship at church was this idea of faith. And not just in the sense of I believe that Jesus is the Son of God. That's perhaps almost certainly the most important kind of faith you could have. But thinking more in terms of business and leadership, um, having faith does not guarantee a specific outcome necessarily. Having faith that I can grow my business to a certain size doesn't necessarily mean that I can. Doesn't necessarily mean that it'll happen the way I want it to. Lots of startups are started with great optimism and do not succeed, right? But I do think that without faith, it is highly unlikely for you to achieve those long-term goals if you don't have the faith. So, what do I mean by this? So, let's say that I have a vision to grow my company to $5 million in revenue and 10 employees. Let's say that, okay? Now, on the way to that goal, I run into difficulties. Maybe I have trouble getting my customers' acquisition funnel dialed in. Or my business model is pretty rough and I'm struggling to get the margin that I need to have. Or let's say, since I'm in marketing, let's say the ad platforms are being cantankerous and it's hard for me to get the lead generation that I need, or I picked a bad industry to target, or whatever, right? So any number of difficulties can come up in business and do, right? Like there are many, many challenges in business. In fact, essentially your reward for reaching one level of success is a whole new set of problems, right? So, but so you could say, well, just because I have faith that I will do $5 million in revenue and have 10 employees doesn't mean that I will achieve that goal. And if you said that, you would be technically correct. However, if I do not have faith for that, in other words, and I don't mean faith necessarily, well, okay, it could be both, faith in several ways. One could be faith in God, that he will help me to achieve that goal. But the more broad, general faith that I'm talking about here is faith in, I believe that it's possible, and I believe that I will see it through to get to that point. Without that belief, I guess maybe would be a little more of a neutral term to use, if you will. But without that belief, it's not likely, first of all, that I will have the tenacity to stick with it and to get there. It's unlikely that I will take the actions needed to get to that point. It's unlikely that I will make the right decisions that align with that goal if I don't believe it can actually happen. And it's very unlikely that I can persuade other people to join me in that pursuit effectively if I don't personally believe that it can happen. So it's this interesting thing where having faith, having the belief for a certain outcome, doesn't guarantee the outcome, but not having it almost does guarantee that you will not achieve it. So I do think that you can learn to some degree, you can learn to have faith. You can learn to have belief that helps you get to the next level. And I think one of the things that can happen, one of the things that helps, I think, is if you stack success, right? You start building on successes, and you start seeing that things are possible, that you can achieve bigger goals and so forth. But I think some of it just comes down to just a decision that you make. I believe I'm going to sustain a belief that this can happen, and I will base my actions, my decisions, my relationships. I'm going to align everything in my life with this belief that I hold, so that things are congruent, and that I give myself the best possible likelihood of achieving a goal, achieving the thing that I have in my mind. So it's kind of like just seeing the thing in your mind doesn't mean that you for sure will get it. But if you can't see it, pretty likely that you won't get there, right? The old adage, whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, you're right. Um, sounds kind of harsh, kind of brutal. I in a way I don't like that. I'm like, well, that's not nice. But I think there is considerable truth, and I think also like the sort of this thing of like steering a ship that's in motion versus trying to steer a ship that's in the harbor. Um, the ship in the harbor not going anywhere. There's not a lot to work with there when it comes to changing directions for more success, right? Whereas when you're underway, you're under steam or whatever, you're making progress. The chances of you actually stumbling on something that does work, even if your original idea didn't work, probably a lot higher. So it's a combination of getting your mind in the right place that encourages you to take action, and then also making a point of taking action so that you continue to give your mind evidence that you're making progress. And also, of course, just real world, progress does require real world action. And so, now I say real world, I don't mean that, to be clear, God can supernaturally create results in business and all of those things. But normally, it seems he does like us to partner with us, and he likes us to take action in the real world, not just I don't know if I should use that term, the real world. It makes it sound like I think the spiritual world is not real, and that's not true. What I mean is in the physical and emotional and spiritual world where other people interact with us. We need to take action in that sphere as well, typically, for God to take us where he wants us to go.